point it, pull the trigger, and boom, somebody dies.
The year is 1994, and Jean-Claude Van Damme does the splits between two kitchen counters while fighting time-traveling criminals. This was Hollywood's first serious attempt at making Timecop movies happen, and somehow it became Van Damme's biggest hit while simultaneously killing the genre forever. Universal bet $27 million that audiences wanted their action stars jumping through history, kicking bad guys across centuries. They were right. Timecop made $101 million worldwide. They were also wrong. Nobody ever successfully made another Timecop movie again, proving that financial success and creative validation are completely different things.
Walker.
When Max Walker discovers corrupt politicians stealing from the past to fund present campaigns, the film stumbles into territory where martial arts and temporal paradoxes fight for screen time. The movie that won at the box office lost the war for legitimacy. This started with Dark Horse Comics trying to capitalize on their success, turning comics into movies after RoboCop and The Mask. They had a 6-issue series called Timecop about law enforcement officers policing time travel, and it had everything Hollywood loved: high concept, action potential, and almost zero public recognition that meant cheap rights acquisition. Producer Moshe Diamant saw the pitch: cops who chase criminals through time to prevent historical alterations.
Have a nice day.
And immediately thought Terminator meets Die Hard. Universal Pictures heard Jean-Claude Van Damme vehicle and opened their wallets. This was 1992, peak Van Damme era, when his films were printing money internationally, even when domestic audiences stayed away. The original comic was actually thoughtful science fiction exploring temporal ethics and causality consequences. Writer Mark Verheiden had created something closer to Philip K. Dick than Arnold Schwarzenegger. The movie adaptation took one look at that complexity and said, nah, let's have Van Damme kick people across decades. Screenwriter Mike Richardson adapted his own comic, which should have preserved the intelligent elements. Instead, he simplified everything to fit the Van Damme formula: wronged hero, dead wife motivation, corrupt villain, martial arts solution to philosophical problems. Every nuanced concept from the comic got replaced with another roundhouse kick. Director Peter Hyams came aboard because he'd proven with 2010, the year we make contact, that he could handle science fiction on a budget. What Universal didn't mention was that Hyams would also serve as cinematographer, editor, and basically control every aspect of production. This wasn't collaboration. It was one man's vision of what time travel action should look like. The budget was $27 million. Serious money for a Van Damme film, but nothing compared to actual science fiction blockbusters. Terminator 2 had cost over $100 million. Total Recall spent $65 million. Timecop needed to create convincing time travel, future technology, and historical settings for roughly what other films spent on craft services. By 1993, they were filming a movie that couldn't decide whether it wanted to be smart sci-fi or dumb action, so it tried both and succeeded at neither in ways that somehow added up to commercial success. Sometimes the math works even when the art doesn't. Jean-Claude Van Damme got the lead because his name on a poster guaranteed international box office regardless of story quality. His Max Walker was basically every character Van Damme had played before. Tragic past, martial arts expertise, accent that nobody questions despite allegedly being American. JCVD brought his signature moves and limited emotional range to a role that required more acting than spinning. The film's genius move was not asking Van Damme to stretch. They wrote to his strengths, action sequences, physical comedy through martial arts, and looking intensely confused during exposition scenes about temporal mechanics. When scientists explain time travel rules, Van Damme's glazed expression perfectly mirrors audience comprehension. Mia Sara played Melissa, Max's wife, who dies in the opening act and returns later through time travel complications. Sarah brought genuine warmth to a character who existed mainly to motivate the hero and create emotional stakes. Her chemistry with Van Damme was surprisingly effective, making you almost forget she was a walking plot device. Ron Silver took the villain role as Senator Aaron McComb, the corrupt politician funding his campaigns through time travel theft. Silver understood the assignment: play it completely straight, make the absurd seem plausible, chew scenery without acknowledging how ridiculous the premise was. When he delivers speeches about using stolen Confederate gold to fund modern elections, Silver sells it through pure commitment. Bruce McGill as Matuzak, Max's partner and mentor, provided exposition and comic relief. McGill had perfected the gruff cop friend role and executed it professionally despite dialogue that explained time travel rules that made no scientific sense. His job was making nonsense sound authoritative, and he succeeded. Gloria Rubin as Sarah Fielding, the idealistic senator who helps expose the conspiracy, brought credibility the film desperately needed. Rubin played her character as genuinely intelligent and capable, providing contrast to Van Damme's punch, first ask questions, never approach. The supporting cast featured character actors who could deliver technobabble convincingly. Scott Bellis as the tech expert, Scott Lawrence as another tech agent. These were professionals making paychecks while pretending time travel bureaucracy made sense. Their commitment to treating ridiculous material seriously helped audiences suspend disbelief. The real challenge was making Van Damme's action sequences work within time travel logic. Choreographer demonstrating splits while avoiding temporal paradoxes required creativity that resulted in the film's most memorable image: Van Damme suspended between kitchen counters in a pose that defied both physics and narrative necessity. Peter Hyams faced an impossible challenge: create convincing time travel on a budget that barely covered decent special effects. The solution was practical ingenuity and hoping audiences wouldn't examine the temporal mechanics too closely. The time travel effect itself, a spherical distortion rippling through space, combined practical photography with early CGI just convincingly enough to work without breaking the bank. The key was showing it sparingly, making each temporal jump count rather than overwhelming limited resources. The 2004 future setting required technology that seemed advanced but achievable. The Time Enforcement Commission headquarters featured computer displays and monitoring equipment that looked futuristic without being absurd, suggesting government bureaucracy had simply gotten shinier. But the film's signature effect needed zero CGI, just Van Damme doing actual splits between kitchen counters while fighting. No digital trickery required, just a 33-year-old action star demonstrating flexibility that looked simultaneously impressive and completely ridiculous. Sometimes the best effects are purely physical. Filming Timecop in Vancouver and Montreal pretending to be Washington, D.C. required creative geography and audience willingness to ignore obvious Canadian architecture. Peter Hyams operated his own camera, giving him complete visual control while doing 3 jobs simultaneously: director, cinematographer, and the guy yelling "cut." This eliminated debates about framing, but meant one exhausted man running the entire production. Jean-Claude Van Damme performed his own stunts, including the signature splits and various martial arts sequences. This saved money on stunt doubles, but created delays when he inevitably injured himself attempting physically impossible moves for a man in his 30s. The time travel premise actually simplified scheduling chaos. Different eras could be filmed out of sequence without continuity concerns. If something didn't match between 1994 and 1929, just blame temporal paradoxes rather than admit production mistakes. Vancouver locations provided versatility that Hollywood couldn't match. Historic buildings doubled for various periods, modern structures suggested future settings, and Canadian tax incentives stretched every dollar further. The city's cooperation meant access to government facilities that added production value without major expense. Ron Silver's professionalism kept exposition-heavy scenes moving efficiently. His ability to deliver nonsense about temporal mechanics convincingly on first takes prevented dialogue scenes from dragging when the script required extensive explanation of rules that made limited sense. Budget management meant choosing battles carefully. Major action got proper resources, while smaller moments used existing locations and minimal enhancements. The success that proved nothing. September 16th, 1994. Timecop opened against The Shawshank Redemption and Pulp Fiction, films that would be remembered forever for artistic achievement. Timecop would be remembered for making money while contributing nothing to cinema's evolution. Opening weekend brought $14.6 million, Van Damme's biggest debut ever. Audiences who wanted simple action with sci-fi window dressing showed up and got exactly what the marketing promised. Critics were less impressed. Roger Ebert gave it 2 stars, calling it a competent thriller that doesn't challenge the mind. The Washington Post noted that time travel serves mainly as excuse for martial arts, but international audiences didn't care about artistic merit. Japan, where Van Damme was massive, embraced the film. European markets that had supported his previous work showed up reliably. South American theaters played Timecop for months. The film that American critics dismissed as mediocre action became a global phenomenon through sheer star power. Total worldwide gross reached $101.6 million against the $27 million budget. By any financial measure, Timecop was a massive success. Van Damme's highest grossing film as lead actor, a genuine hit that should have launched a franchise. Universal immediately greenlit sequels and a television series. But here's where commercial success diverged from cultural impact. The direct-to-video sequel, Timecop 2. The Berlin decision arrived in 2003 with different cast, smaller budget, and 0 theatrical release. The ABC television series lasted 9 episodes before cancellation. Neither continuation generated any enthusiasm because the original film succeeded through Van Damme's star power rather than compelling premise. The problem was that Timecop had proven you could make money with time travel action, but hadn't proven the concept itself was franchise-worthy. Remove Van Damme, and you had mediocre science fiction with unremarkable time travel mechanics. The film worked as vehicle for one specific star at one specific moment, but offered nothing that demanded continuation. Critics recognized this immediately. The success was financial accident rather than artistic achievement. Entertainment Weekly called it competent but forgettable. Variety noted it would satisfy action fans without converting anyone to the genre. Everyone understood this was a one-time hit rather than franchise foundation. The film that made the most money taught Hollywood the wrong lesson. That time travel action could work. What they missed was that time travel action only worked when you had an international action star willing to do splits while fighting through history. The genre didn't succeed. Van Damme succeeded despite the genre. The legacy that never happened. Timecop should have launched 1,000 imitators. Instead, it became the first and last successful Timecop movie, proving the concept was commercially viable but creatively bankrupt. Every studio looked at the box office numbers and started developing time travel action scripts. Every one of them failed. The problem was that Timecop succeeded through factors that couldn't be replicated. Van Damme's international appeal at that specific moment in 1994. Peter Hyam's efficient direction that delivered exactly enough to satisfy without exceeding expectations. A budget low enough that moderate success became massive profit. None of these elements could be recreated on purpose. Hollywood tried anyway. Time travel action scripts circulated for years, all trying to capture Timecop's financial magic. None got made because executives eventually realized the film had succeeded despite its premise rather than because of it. The genre that seemed proven was actually a dead end disguised as opportunity. The film's influence on time travel cinema was essentially negative. It showed what didn't work. Combining action and temporal mechanics created narrative problems that martial arts couldn't solve. Movies learned to either take time travel seriously, like Looper and Edge of Tomorrow, or ignore it completely, like most action films. The middle ground Timecop occupied became territory everyone avoided. Van Damme's career peaked with Timecop, then declined as the action star era faded. He never found another role that balanced his physical skills with commercial premise as effectively. The film that made him a box office champion also marked the beginning of his descent into direct-to-video territory. The movie that proved time travel action could work also proved it probably shouldn't. Sometimes the most successful films are the ones that teach everyone what not to try replicating. So was Timecop a successful failure or a failed success? What's your favorite film that made money while contributing nothing to its genre? Share your thoughts below and subscribe for more stories about movies that won at the box office but lost at everything else that matters.